So we're going to have a chat around this table in terms of utilising data and digital to improve customer experience. So what I'm going to do is just introduce Rajiv, or rather let you introduce yourself, and just talk us through what that means for you at Notting Hill Genesis, if that's okay.
Excellent. I've got a few slides. I just want to give you where we are in terms of customer experience. I guess probably for the first time in our history, we've had a pivotal change in the reason why we exist, right? So far, I guess it's been creating stock, creating homes for people that need it, and to continually do that. Every year, I think we produce about 1,400 homes a year, and 1 or 2 years ago, we kind of decided that right from the board that it needs to change and focus more on customer experience and customer satisfaction. And as part of that, even the exec was reconfigured, let's say, as well as our operations is completely being overhauled, finance, pretty much all forward-facing, but also the supporting services has been completely changed to focus on our residents and our customers. So this is our profile, and you'll see that our resident satisfaction is 76%, and it's not good enough. On the transactions, we are much better. So if we do a repair, things like that, at the end, when we survey, we get very high scores. But on the overall perception, the overall experience, we are not good enough. But on our people side, we are really great. We usually get about 90% satisfaction from our own colleagues. So there's obviously there's a disconnect, and we want to fix it. And part of that is through data, through technology, but also a huge amount of that is about people change, culture change, and so on, which is very hard to do. But data and technology can really help us. So when I started, so this is kind of like how each of those layers fit in, and we've got those 3 strategic objectives now, and essentially they're all around people, all around the customer and the resident. So when I first started, my main strategy was to consolidate our estate. So I had about 240 different systems, and it was too much. I had 6 CRM systems. It was too much technology, a lot of data, a lot of it inaccurate. There's a huge amount of latency. So if you wanted something, it takes you 2 weeks to get that information. So when I got an estate, once I was confronted with a leaseholder, had lots of questions. I had no data. I couldn't have a conversation with her. And it took about 4 weeks to get back to her, just because, not because people are not trying, it was really difficult to find data. So consolidation is actually a huge part of this. And the other part of it is data centralization. And they are heavily connected. So we moved completely into the cloud. We got a cloud data infrastructure. And all of this tech is to help people do their jobs very efficiently, so that we have good data behind it. And by centralizing and consolidating, some of that will naturally just happen. And generally speaking, I will just let everyone see the data that we have. So I don't have people in the middle trying to change and fix data. So, for example, when we in a portal, we found that actually a lot of the emails that we had was incorrect, but we showed up the incorrect emails to everyone and quickly got fixed. So, some of this will naturally happen, but a lot of it is through helping our colleagues to understand data, understand the tools, the digital tools that they have, and so on. So what does it actually mean? So I've got some examples. So, these are performance dashboards that come out of data. And there's, again, no manipulation. It shows up straight away. So if you have not completed your inspections, your repairs, it'll show up. And it will be part of your appraisal, right? So, this will, it's like a complete cycle that will help data improve, but also we can have a qualitative and a quantitative approach to appraisals, and that will in turn help change culture. On the board level and EB level, before we had lots of data, and pretty much none of it was looked at because it was too much for anyone to consume. So we have just taken those three objectives, and we've got these trackers, and this is what we look at EB level, at board level, non-exec board level. This is what we look at. And if there are things that fall behind, then we can drill in and find that information. Why did it happen? And we can then investigate, and it's a much more natural way of looking at information. So I'm not going to go on. This is just an introduction. So that's about it, really, from me.
Thank you so much, and great to show us some of these examples to bring that to life. Do you want to share a little bit, Claire, in terms of your journey?
Hi, I'm Claire from Flagship. Nice to meet you all. So I don't think anyone here has got digital entirely sewn up, but if they have, I'll sit next to them at dinner and you can tell me all. I'm guessing otherwise we wouldn't be here today. So from our perspective, it's about the foundations, the basics, doing the basics really, really well. So we've been focusing a lot of our efforts and time on that in a program called the Essentials Program. And really it comes from a place of, you know, imagine a scenario, you wouldn't build a house on some land that's got no planning, that's going to subside, that's got no utility pipes, that's got no connections to anything, but put a lovely shiny house on there and expect it to just work and be brilliant. So if you think of that scenario, actually spend time getting your foundations in place. People want to pay their rent, they want to raise a repair, they want to contact us, and they want to make that really, really easy. So we've been spending a lot of time on the basics. The Essentials program is a customer-centric transformation program where we have aggressively, I would say, made sure that all of the people that work for our organisation and all the senior leaders are aligned and making sure that everybody is pushing in the same direction. So you've probably had this, but people go off by their own technologies that don't integrate, that cause us even more grief and problems and issues, and they might serve a purpose for a time. But making sure that our IT strategy aligns, making sure that people are making good decisions, that we have principles behind those things. We are now working methodically through, I think, 27 different areas of our customer journey, almost one at a time, really, with a set of key principles behind each one. I was speaking to somebody at the back just earlier about, wouldn't it be great if we could just turn everything off, start again? We can't quite do that, but if we could, wouldn't we do things differently to what we did 20 years ago? So yeah, I think that methodical, disciplined, signed up, behaviour and that expectation of people when they come in is what we need. And if we don't stray away from that, we might be onto something. It is slow. Digital is slow. It isn't overnight. But yeah, we're making good progress. We've released one or two things that have now started to work in that way. And if we can work slowly through that customer journey, making sure we get customer engagement and involvement in at the very front end before we design and deliver, we should be onto something. And we will let you know. But yeah, the Essentials program for us is about doing the basics brilliantly. And you see lots of articles in Housing Technology and other publications that have some great stories in them, but just making sure we don't get too distracted and do the things that matter to tenants is where we're focused at the moment.
And that resonates with me, certainly, in terms of there's a bit of a temptation for like shiny things. And that's exciting. That's it. But actually, those basics, if those fundamentals aren't in place, it represents a lot of challenges. Both of you talked about or alluded to sort of behaviours, so a discipline, methodical, the objective setting, the KPI. Like that's culturally, that's a big change. Like what are some of the challenges you've had with getting that through?
So if I take it down to a smaller scale, so when I started, so I come from software agency, and it's very usual for us to track everything that we do because we have to monetize them, and we need to figure out what we did, what do we learn from what we do. We take it in 2 weekly sprints and so on. So when I first came, and it is talking about the culture of in the sector and so on, which is changing. And I came in 6 years ago, but when I kind of tried to introduce it in my own department in technology, there was a lot of pushback, as in quite personally, they found it as an attack on themselves. Are you going to be tracking me, what I do, have my lunch? Actually, that's not the purpose of it. The purpose of it is to figure out what are people doing. And I mean, generally speaking, in my experience, I've done a lot of consulting and introduced systems in lots of companies. And what you find is that as soon as you put something like that in, people become more efficient, just naturally. You don't have to check anything. I get a 20% gain straight away, just by having a system where you have to click on, just tell the system what you're doing. So, people will think about what they're doing more if you have a system, but they need to be trained, they need to be educated on why that is useful for themselves, right? So, for example, one of the things I said is, some of you are complaining that you've got too much work, but this will tell us at a management level why that is the case and who has more work, and we can ask for more resource, but it's backed with data, and that is, you can't argue with that, and that will make our case. Right. So, I mean, there are many things like that. So at a broader level, when we looked at it, again, lots of people, it's very usual for people to say they've got too much work. And when we looked at our entire workforce, we found that actually about 20% they have got more work than they can do. Right. And that, they would then feedback on that. But everybody thinks that is the entirety of all of our workforce, which is not true. So we can have very logical conversations about this, and you can come out of that with a very positive culture, right? By looking at the problems much more objectively, and then explaining to people, and also using the tools well. So we don't train very well, we don't induct very well, and a lot of this is by actually looking at data side of things and looking at how, behavior and tracking what people are doing and how they're doing it, how long they're doing it, are they prioritizing things? And people get excited about different things that actually matter to the business and to themselves, right?
It's about making work visible.
Exactly.
Making that work visible, but that can feel, if people aren't used to that environment, brother. Like you say, it's that data-driven conversation, much more objective, much easier to make the case. Is there anything you want to add in terms of that?
I think for us, it's more about making data visible, so we can resolve at point of contact. So much of our legacy means that isn't available, or it's in different places, or it's hard to find. For us, it's making sure that any decisions we make going forward are integrated systems, integrated data sources, that display that information in a single source of truth. I know it's the same thing over and over again, but it is just so important to help people feel really good in their roles, that they can answer a question, that they can find a solution, that they can get good CSAT from that, and that we don't have to pass tenants around. But I think we've got something like 120 odd systems, and just finding what we need and bringing that down is so important for the customer experience. And I think we also forget sometimes that we all work for the same organisation. I think there was a slide up here earlier that, I work for the group and I can help you around equality. I thought it was such a meaningful slide that actually, but that goes across everything, doesn't it? We represent the group, we can answer your question, we can find the information we need, but we can't put digital on top of something that doesn't work underneath. So yeah, I think it's about that single source of truth.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you so much, both of you. So we're going to do similar to what we did in the panel this morning, and just give you guys 5 minutes or so to have a chat amongst yourselves in terms of some of the topics that we've just talked about. And then we'll open up again for some questions, and Chester will be roaming with his microphone. So yeah, do you want to just have a chat for 5 minutes or so, and then we'll take some questions. Thank you. If you wouldn't mind, just letting us, just introducing yourself and then sharing your question with us, that'd be fab.
Thank you. So it's Helen from Sanctuary. I'm really interested. You say that your satisfaction is 76.4%. Appreciate you're not happy with that, but it's not bad for the sector. But what was really interesting about your comments was you said that your repairs satisfaction was a lot higher. I know across the sector that isn't a common position to be in. So I'd be really interested in how you're achieving that, and what is therefore dropping your figures down, if we can use that terminology, to the 76.4%.
Absolutely. So the transaction surveys are when somebody calls up and they go through either to we've got people on the field, so either to a housing officer or to the call center. And at the end of that call, there's a survey that is taken. So it's based on that, what is a transaction like, right? So it could be after or at the end of a repair or at the start of the repair. We have got integrated systems, so we integrate directly with, we use weights, for example, and we integrate right into their system. So when our customers raise a repair, it's going right into the weight system, which is MRI, or into Plumtific, which is the other provider that we use. So, and then we track all of that centrally, directly link it to those systems. And then we inform our customers of what's happening through our own mechanisms, through SMS messaging, emails, and so on. So, we've had that for 5 or 6 years now. So it's pretty mature. I'd say, I'm not happy about that number. It needs to be a lot higher. The reason why it is lower is because our systems were built for responsive repairs. And so, we've got all those different types of repairs and so on. But what I see is there are quite complex repairs that are coming through, and that's really driving down the perception or the experience, really. I mean, some of them are so bad. I mean, in terms of, you might fix a repair. So if I give you an example, somebody might have a slash window and it's rotten. A responsive repair is not going to fix the whole window. They're going to patch that window. But then it goes to assets, and then assets, depending on the planned repair, might choose to do it in 6 months' time or in 2 weeks' time. I don't know what the criteria is. But if it takes 6 months, that repair would be patched. It would have a problem in a month. It will be raised. So every time, from a responsive repairs point of view, that transaction is very good because that problem is fixed. So if you're cold and your window is fixed, you're happy for that moment because that's when you're taking the survey. But actually, over that 6-month period, you're not happy because somebody has come into your house 4 times in 6 months, and that's not a good result, right? So I think that's different. So some of the AI capabilities that I'm looking at is looking at, so I think that we've got an information ceiling at 2 tiers up from the bottom. So problems that are occurring at the lower end, we are not seeing higher up. And we can't deal with some of those problems unless the ombudsman comes in or when really bad stuff happens. So I'm trying to figure out how can we use some of this unstructured data and some of the patterns and some of this to escalate things automatically. For example, the manager might get a message on Teams automatically because the system recognizes it's a problem, it's matching a pattern. Like, for example, if you suddenly go to another country and the credit card company knows that, oh, this is an unusual pattern. Similarly, we can figure out patterns. So those are ways that potentially technology could help with some of those unsatisfied customers.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? Everybody's tired now. I'll throw a question in while you're sort of thinking about it. We talked a little bit there, but in terms of repairs, I mean, I suppose you've touched on it there, but yeah, surely there's a real role to play here in terms of data insight, in terms of challenges around repairs and particularly our investment in repairs. Like, is there anything you'd sort of talk about around that?
Yeah, so I don't know whether it must be the same across the sector, because what we found is that last year we went over budget quite a bit. This year, we are not even finished the year. We're way over the budget. Something obviously has happened. And so all of this infrastructure is great in terms of technology, but actually the real practicality is that within 2 weeks, we could pinpoint why that happened, when it happened, what is the cause of that problem, right? So in our case, we could tell that in April, it shot up by 100% on one provider, right? On very specific items. And some of them are good, actually, because some of them were related to damp and mold, and we had this whole program of work to kind of sort out that problem. So there were good things that came out of the data. So rather than shock, actually, some of this is actually good. We are actually putting the money where we should be putting the money. some of it was actually bad management of contractors, or maybe somebody has done a job and actually it's a bad job and they've gone in and done the job again and they've charged for the second time too. So so then it comes back down to culture. Then we were able to take that data and say, actually, why isn't anyone looking at these things, right? Why is it coming like I'm at EB looking at this kind of information? Somebody should be looking at this, and as a result, we have now got a team looking at contractor management, procurement. How do we, how can we be more like a commercial? I used to work with commercial real estate companies, and they're very, very thorough. They push back quite a lot on that. On the other side, around the finance systems, we are changing as well. And what is the impact on the customer? For example, we don't pay a lot of our invoices, or not deliberately, just because of our processes, early enough, right? But if we were able to pay those off, then we will focus the conversations on, how can they provide a better service to our residents and keep our residents happy, right? So hopefully that's kind of helped.
Yes, thank you. Thanks. Do you want to add anything?
Don't mind, can do. We've just invested quite heavily in our technology for repairs. I think going back to Lady's point, 3 really clear areas of dissatisfaction for repairs are: you don't keep me updated around where my repair is. Somebody might have been rude to me. We don't hear that a lot, but there is the people aspect that we have to look at. It might be 5-10%, but it's something we can do something about. And very much, you didn't repair it first time. When you came, you didn't do it. So I think those 3 things are really crystal clear. If you had one measure of repairs performance, for me, it would be customer satisfaction all day long. We are very much looking at repairs as a priority. I think it's around 80% of what matters to customers in their homes. So I think it's about just keeping an eye on the things that actually, year on year, you see relatively the same levels of satisfaction, relatively the same themes without looking too hard. So if we're really focusing on those things, hopefully we might get something right at some point soon as a collective sector. So yeah, I think data is really important and understanding what those are. But I think if you just speak to tenants, it will be the same 3 things over and over again.
Agreed. Thank you so much. Yes, we've got a question at the front. Oh, yes, sorry, apologies.
Hello, I'm Ricky Sipia from Westway Housing Association. And sorry, I might have missed the first 5 minutes of your presentation, rather, and Lindsay. But what I want to do is just take it a bit wider. If you've carried out your tenant satisfaction measure surveys, have you gone about collecting that information in terms of the satisfaction on repairs, et cetera? Telephone calls, quarterly, monthly, yearly? Could you just share some of your experience?
Yeah, I'm happy to share. We do a rolling survey. So we survey every month using a research company. We do, I think it's 70% phone calls, 30% emails. We're also doing some face-to-face where we can for hard to reach. But yeah, I think we had a conversation in the break, and it is very much, there's no set standard for all of us. So there are different approaches which will reap different results. And I think probably that's a bit of a challenge because people will be doing things in different ways. And until we get to the end of this year, we're not going to know what that looks like. But generally, I think people are trying to do what they can with the 295 pages of guidance. And that's where we are at the moment, about 75%. Yeah. Thanks.
This one is annually, but we continually do measurements. Like I said, we do transactional service as well. But this is a little bit dated way of looking at things. And in fact, today I was talking to, we have got a specific person for customer experience now, a director. And he's coming from HSBC, and he was telling us about how we can modernize some of the survey techniques. We've got these, the ones that we use, which is kind of straightforward, direct surveys. But we are going to also use inferred information. So, what has our residents told others. So, for example, you could look at Trustpilot as an example. So, inferred data, we'll be capturing that as part of that information, and then third-party inferred, which is around what has people spoken So obviously our colleagues, but how, we need to capture that information, and then behavior, So people might not say anything, but from behavioral patterns, we can figure out how people are feeling, if if that would be a happy journey or an unhappy journey. So as an example, if you look at onboarding journeys for for tenants, you can look at the patterns that they are on that journey, and you can then figure out how the experience would be. So we're not doing it yet. So we are doing it the traditional way at the moment, but the plan is to take the next 3-6 months to look at these different avenues where we can capture data, and then hopefully that will translate to better experience for our customers.
Thank you so much. You got a question?
Yep. I'm interested in, and it came up on your slides, but how are you using data and systems to enable our people to get the good customer service? And I know you just mentioned that people is one of the P's, but I very much come from technology, we're ever chasing, digital use is forever causing us problems. Digital skills are one of the biggest things that we're all facing. So what are you currently using that's working for you in relation to be able to support our people, enable them to be the best they can be for our customers?
Great question. So about 6 years ago, we looked at the various technologies that's out there. And we came to the conclusion that there is none that actually would give us the experience that we want for our colleagues. So we built it ourselves. So we built it all on very modern cloud technology, so serverless technology, microservices, and so on. In fact, the same kind of services as Facebook and Amazon. And what the short of it is that if you look at a repairs journey at that time, somebody's out in the field, they had these phones that you couldn't use to get any data from any system. I think we were using Docomotive at that time. And you couldn't also save any information in a way that is, you save it and that's it, you go away. What they had to do was come back and then, go to your CRM system, log your case, then log it in the supplier system, raise a PO. There are multiple things that they had to do. And what we did was to have a single common systems, not just for our colleagues, but also for our customers. And it made a huge difference. So we were looking at it first from the point of experience. We're looking at what are the journeys. So people don't have to hold all this information in their heads, right? Which is bad for our colleagues, but also really bad for the organization, because our customers will receive an inconsistent service depending on who you get. By doing this, a lot of that information is held by the system. For example, if you were to raise a repair, and if that repair has already been logged, the system will tell you it's been logged, and it will actually make it hard for you to log that repair. If that repair is not, because we've got different verticals, different products, if that you're not eligible for that, it will tell you that's the case. So that system is centralized and is intelligent enough to help you do your job easily, but also help our customers to self-service. And everything is the same. So, when I first started, we kind of sit like in a mixed group. So I was listening to the conversation between one of my colleagues and a customer, and they're talking about rent statements. And the customer obviously had a completely different formatted statement than the one that the colleague was looking at. And they couldn't actually, it was painful for me to listen to. But now it's exactly the same. There's no difference between what a customer sees and a colleague sees. So these things actually make a difference in the sense that you're then talking about the actual problem of the customer, not about some other stuff. Like in the case of service charges, if it was now, I would be taking my phone, going to the app and saying, okay, these are the charges that you have. Then we have a different conversation. They might not agree with the charge. It might be too much or whatever it is. That's a completely different conversation. I can settle that conversation there, right? So that's the kind of experience that we will always have problems, but it's more about how can we get our colleagues to focus on the problems as much as possible and help our customers.
Thank you. Anything else to add before we wrap up?
I think really simply, less systems, one source of truth. Accessibility, really important. Don't put white words on green backgrounds, things like that, making it easy. But ultimately, you just want people to do the work that they're really good at, which is generally the human-to-human interaction. So as much of that you can lift away from them, the better. So yeah, we've got a couple of new roles: digital skills advisor to help people really embed the systems that we choose. A user experience role, which is new, which focuses on watching people, understanding how they're using things, customer and staff, and really doing that from a design stage. So, you see these different organisations that watch people, how they're interacting with things. We need to do so much more of that, because it actually isn't about just giving somebody something and expecting them to use it. It's about whether they've had a chance to contribute to that as well.
Thank you so much. So that wraps up our panel. So I hope you enjoyed that. We're going to do, what's it called again? A stage flip. So give us a couple of minutes. There'll be a stage flip, and then we'll have the next presenter on. So thanks for listening.